This week on the podcast, we are back in Vienna to chat with Wolfgang Warsch, the designer behind board games like the Mind.
The beat of the drums echoes in the pulse beat of the young braves.
Salut les joueuses, salut les joueurs, je suis Paul Gara, on se retrouve pour une nouvelle interview. Je suis encore à Vienne et je suis en compagnie aujourd'hui de Wolfgang Warsch. Salut Wolfgang.
Hello, welcome to Vienna.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Because tonight we are in an hotel where you weekly meet other Austrian board game designers, and you kindly invited me. You come to this nights from many years, or it's recent?
No, we are doing this now So I started doing this when I came back from the UK. I've been living in the UK for roughly 4 years. I came back in 2016, and at the end of 2016, I met Alexander Pfister, who is also in Vienna, and he already started a few months or maybe even years before, I cannot even say, a regular board game designer meeting group. And when I met him in 2016, he invited me to come. And I do this now on a regular basis since then 9 years already.
You mentioned that you lived in the UK for 4 years, and it seems to me that I've read that it's where you really discovered board games during your UK stay, because you're not a hardcore board game addict player before being in the UK. Am I right?
Yeah, this is right. So I was always fascinated by board games, and if I would have been like maybe in the right group, or if my family would have been more in board games, I would probably have played more before. But when I moved to the UK, I met a lot of friends that really have been heavy into board games, and they basically introduced me to modern board games. And this is where I really actually starting to play, or let's say look outside of the box and play other games than just the usual party games or Monopoly, whatever. And I got introduced to Seven Wonders and modern classics.
And when you discovered board games, the idea of create your own board games came at the same moment, or it takes you a long time before thinking that, okay, I'm a player, but now I want to be a game designer?
No, it's actually the other way around. I was already developing board games long before that. So more out of boredness, I would say, when I was 17, 18 years old. I just had the idea that it could be fun to develop a board game. So I was always playing board games a bit. Like I bought Settlers of Catan for my first own money, I would say, that I got from my parents. And different classical card games that you used to play in Germany, Austria, or I played chess and stuff like that. So I always enjoyed playing board games. And when I was 17, 18, I was like, had an idea that could be fun to make your own board game. Just like, I don't know exactly what was the reason for that. But I bought a billiard table.
Okay.
Short before with a friend of mine, an old one, and repaired it. And one day I had an idea, wouldn't it be fun to make a pool board game, a billiard table board game? And this was so my first try to make my own board game.
Do you think that the distance between your board game player experience and because some of a board game designer played lots of and many board games from they are very young, and do you think this distance keeps you less influenced by other board games, and then you can your creations are more original, like because of that?
Actually, I would say no, because I have been trying to develop board games before I moved to the UK. And these were mainly influenced by the board games that I knew. So I mainly made party games, very simple games. But then when I moved to the UK, and I mentioned I started playing other board games, I got inspired actually by games like Hanabi. And without Hanabi, I would probably never have tried to make a game like Illusion or The Mind. And I played Dominion. And without Dominion, there would have probably never been a game like Quacks of Quedlinburg. So no, I wouldn't say. Maybe it's good to maybe have like a bit of a distance, to have like your own creative space that maybe gets too narrow when you have like an idea for how normally a game has to work, but without this let's say, small library of games in the back of my head, I think I would have never developed most or many of the games that I did.
You mentioned Anabi, and of course, when we discover the Mind, we can see the relationship between the two board games. And Antoine Bozai, I interviewed him, and he told me that for him, the Mind is a perfect version of Anabi.
Oh, I love to hear this. Oh, that's so nice.
I will send you the track. Really?
Oh yeah, this would be great. This would be amazing.
Because it's more streamlined. It's more streamlined than Anabi, which is very streamlined, the board game.
Yes, absolutely. And Antoine is and has always been one of my absolute favorite designers, with Seven Wonders, one of my favorite, if not my favorite board game. And he has inspired me with a lot of his games that I played over the years. And yeah, it's great to hear.
We're going to talk about the Mind just after. You studied sciences. You are a biologist at the...
Yes.
I think now you're only a board game designer.
I'm a full game board game designer now. Yes, correct.
Do you think that your scientist experience is helpful to create board games, that there is like the method is sometimes the same or not? Or you think that there are similarities in the way of approaching a board game, like approaching a research?
This I would answer with yes. So if there's a question if making research influenced how I develop board games, or if this like inspired me to make board games, I would say no. I would rather say a lot of people who like to develop board games are many times working in science or natural science or mathematic industry, or work for companies who are somehow science related. So I think that if this is kind of the same thinking, abstract thinking, theoretical logic thinking that you enjoy doing, this is kind of same like think about board games and think about science. But in general, working in science feels very close to making board games, especially when you work at university, where you have you need to have a certain background knowledge in the science that you do, but then you have to think about something new, but not completely new, because you have to base it on what's already there. And then you have to start trying to make experiments. That's like making prototypes, and you make the experiments, and then sometimes they fail, and you have to change them. It's like with the prototypes. And after 1 or 2 years or more years, you write together your paper that you send then to other reviewers. This is like sending to a company, and then you get the feedback from the reviewers, and then you have to change the paper again. So it's actually quite similar. The whole process from the first idea until it gets published is very close to the process of the first idea for, this would be a cool research project, until your paper is going to be published. It also takes roughly the same time. Maybe research takes 2-3 years longer, but it's also quite close how it feels. Yes.
In fact, it seems that it learns you patience, and the fact that even if it's not the good prototype at the first time, you're going to you accept that it can fail, and then you start it again.
Yes, it's not always like the first prototype that makes sense, but yeah, it's like in science. So sometimes you make the first experiments and it's the wrong track, just give it up and try something else. And sometimes you make the experiments and they don't work exactly out as you expected, but you have the feeling and see that it's something there, but it's not just the right direction right now.
Okay.
So you have also to decide on, do you want to give it more time and work on it, or do you just like bin it and start completing the project?
You said that you're not a biologist, you are a former biologist, now you're a board game designer, it's your job. What is the reason you decide to stop being a biologist? And I guess that with all your success in board games, from a financial point of view, it was possible, and you already wanted to do that job like a job and not just like a hobby.
Yes, of course. So I developed board games, or tried to develop board games for a long time. So like when I was 18 years old, but then I had a break like for 4 or 5 years. Then I tried again with another game, and then I had a break for 2 or 3 years. But it was always in the back of my mind that, wouldn't it be cool to like make a living out of developing board games, and you can see them actually be in the stores and people will buy it. So it always fascinated me, and it was always kind of a dream. But at the same time, I really enjoyed the job that I was doing. I was a molecular biologist and I was working in cancer research. And then me and my wife, who have been working in the same lab, we moved to UK for 4 years, where we also have been working in Cambridge at a very great cancer research institute. And it was a cool and an absolutely amazing job. So it was nothing that I was like very keen to give up for another career. But then when we moved back from the UK, I very quickly developed within like 1 year the games The Mind, and That's Pretty Clever, and The Quacks of Quedlinburg, and also Illusion. And they all came out in Nuremberg in the beginning of 2018. They all have been published at least here in Germany and Austria. And just a few months before the end of 2017, my contract that I had at the university was running out, and I was already looking for other positions, and I already had 2 other positions that I could start at the beginning of 2018. But I told my wife, knowing that like 4 of my games will be coming out, that I said, before I start now a completely new job, I want to just take like 2 or 3 months off where I just focus on board games, because all the months before I've been working at the university, and my spare time I used completely to work on the games. So I was like altogether like a 70, 80 hours work, but the work on the games I saw as my free time and hobby. I enjoyed it. I didn't really see it as like working time. But nevertheless, I was looking forward to have like 2 or 3 months just for me and developing games. And at the same time, within these 2 or 3 months, The Mind came out and Quacks and everything. And I saw there was initially a very quick buzz around the games. And for me, it was always the idea, can I afford doing this for more than 2 or 3 months? I didn't want to make any risks. We just we had a small child, and we were expecting the second child a few months later. But after the games came out, I realized, yes, I can do this a bit longer than 2 or 3 months. I can take maybe half a year, and things like got longer and longer. And the games came out and were quite successful. So once I realized that it's financially no more a risk for me and my family, I decided, okay, I want to give it a try to make it full time.
We are going to talk about how you create board games, and I have listened to an interview of you where you were explaining that you first start from the mechanic. You think about a cool mechanic, something that you think could be cool, and so mechanics are the first in your mind.
Yes, I think many at least, but most designers I think start with the mechanic, because at the end it's like what the game makes special. I mean, many of my games that get just the theme gets changed afterwards, which doesn't really matter to me too much, because I'm never really attached to the theme. I'm attached to the mechanic. But yes, I always start with the mechanic and try to find something that feels unique. Sometimes the games stay abstract as they are at the beginning. Sometimes they get a theme attached to it. There's only one exception. This is the Taverns of Tiefenthal. I don't know as it's said in French.
Les tavernes de la vallée profonde.
Yes, of course.
It's very poetic. Je sais qu'on a.
I know that in German there is often this kind of play on sounds.
Sounds. Many German board games have these sounds.
Yes. I don't know where this is coming from. but the idea for that developed when I was living in Cambridge, and we went to the pubs every now and then and thought, it would be cool to make a pub game. And that's the reason why I started with the theme. Yes.
And when we met in Berlin, you told me that at the first time you have an idea of a mechanic, and then you see how you can streamline, and then you can decide if it could be a family game or a children game, or you don't close opportunities. In fact, you keep your mind very open to any kind of board games after.
Yes, since I start with the mechanic, I cannot immediately say if it's a very simple mechanic. Even then, I cannot say it's going to be a kids game or family game, or if the mechanic alone is fun enough, then there's a decision, could it be a kids game? Could it be an original family game like The Mind? If the mechanic alone isn't enough, where I have the feeling I have to add stuff around during the time and suddenly the game starts to grow, it can become something like Quacks or Taverns. Normally I try to avoid this if possible. I always rather like to work on very simple, mechanical, simple games. But most of the time, or many times, I don't start with, I want to make a kids game or a family game. I rather want to make a game with like that mechanic, and let's see where the journey goes.
Which I find funny, but it's only my point of view. My interpretation is in your board games, you tell me, okay, I start with the mechanics, but I think there is a lot of human interpretation in your board games. You leave a lot of freedom. You give a lot of freedom to players to decide how they're going to play. In fact, I mean, for example, the mind. It's okay. There are rules, very streamlined rules, but everything is in the player's behavior. In fact, and I think in your board game you find it seems like empathy. You understand empathy?
Empathy, yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
Sorry for my English.
No.
Empathy is very important, I think, in the mind and interpretation, how you feel the other players. It's something that it's not a rule, in fact, but it's something that happens around the table.
Yeah, but it's funny that you say that, because I never thought about this actually. This is more that something that just happens to me accidentally. So I never start like, I want to make a mechanic that somehow provokes empathy among the players. But if it's happening, it's great. I like working on board games and on party games also. And that's always important for me, that you have party games where you have a lot of discussions with your team players, but also like having the feel to be on I would say on the same wavelengths. It's funny because one of the party games is called Wavelengths, but it's also with other party games that I have. I like to have this connection of like deep or maybe not that deep discussions about a very simple topic, and where you have the feeling, we are connecting with each other about like realizing that we think kind of the same, that we haven't realized before. But this is more like happening as I mentioned, as an accident, as a side product, what I'm doing, and it's nothing that I'm somehow aiming for.
I understand that it's not the idea you have in mind when you create, but it's something that I really feel in many of your board games, and even in the Quacksalber von
Quedlinburg, that's terrible name. No, you don't have to be sorry. We are sorry.
Because there is a mechanic of push your luck, but this mechanic is very gives lots of freedom, because if you play, I'm not going to like you the rule, in fact, because we don't have the same behavior with the risk, with the management of the risk. So it's very there are lots of interpretation, and it really depends on the player. In fact, more than in other, for example, in management board games, you really want the players to appropriate the board games. In fact, it seems that it's something you want to give them the possibility to play to be to really appropriate the board games more. In the rules are not so strict. In fact, you understand.
Yes. Again, this is something that's more like happening based on the mechanics that I use. Sometimes we then struggle with the rules of the mechanics, because they're sometimes not always very common. So there can be every now and then room for interpretation, which is nothing that we say, we leave it open and players should do as they want. But sometimes people play it so differently than I in a test group, or sometimes even the company who's making the game, how they played it in the test group, that we think, we covered everything in the rules. And suddenly people started playing the mind in complete different ways that we didn't expect, that, we should have mentioned that in the rules, because people will play this way or that way. And that's also sometimes happening in Quacks or other games. Maybe this has something to do just with many of the mechanics that I'm using. But again, that's nothing that I'm normally aiming for. It's rather the other way around. Normally we try to cover everything in the rules, that there's not a lot of interpretation room there, and that people just know what to do. But sometimes you don't want to take away the fun by especially for the mind. We thought a lot about like what restrictions should we give the players, and how much room should we give them to explore how far they can go without breaking the rules. I mean, it would never take them away that say, you have to sit there with a stone cold face. You're not allowed to show any emotions, because this could already give away something. But everyone plays that way. But it's nothing that I would tell the people should experience themselves. That's the kind of way to play it. And that's for maybe some of the other games too, that we thought about what should we mention in the rules and what should we just leave the room that people can explore what's okay and what's not.
I'm going to ask you a question, a subversive question, because some people say, "Oh, in the mind, you just have to count." But we are okay that you're not. You don't have to count in the mind. It's not the idea of the board game.
Yes, that's true. The thing is, I had the idea for the mind in my head roughly 1 year already before I tried the prototype for the first time. I was like, oh, this wouldn't be cool if we could just play it like just in numerical order without talking. And the first thing that I had in my head is like, oh, and just count seconds, and that's it. And that's the reason why I never tried it for the whole year until my brother-in-law was there and sitting there and said, oh, let's try and make a game. And I have this idea and let's just play it. And immediately I realized, oh, I don't really count in my head. And he also didn't count in his head. And none of my people in the test group did it. And the ones who did, maybe one or two, they counted in different speed than we did. And then I realized that maybe some people, but most people will not count in their head. And for us, this was like, I think we always knew that like not 100% of the people, even if you write it in the rules, and we have written it in the rules, don't count in your head. You cannot prohibit this. But 80% of the people will not even think about this, or will not do this, and they will enjoy the game. And if there are like 10% left that want to count in their head and don't have the great experience, this wouldn't have been a reason for us to not publish the mind, because there is like this rule that could ruin your experience. It's a bit difficult with this game. It's like, don't think of a pink elephant and you think about the pink elephant. Don't count in your head and then you are forced to not count. Yeah.
Have you been surprised of the huge success of the mind?
Oh, yes. So immensely, you have no idea. I only had like 2 games published before. They are tiny games. No one has ever heard about them. They have not been successful. I didn't expect anything. So if someone would have told me the game will sell like 10,000 units or so, I was like, whoa, that's so cool. I had zero expectations. And until today, I'm still super surprised and always still happy how well the game is still doing now, 7 years after it came out. Yes.
I have to say that I was so bluffed when I discovered the mind, because it was so simple, so pure, so streamlined, and we say, oh, why nobody even think about it before? And I think it's quite a perfect board game. You know, it's just like something very streamlined as we dream about such board games. In fact, we are going to talk about something we already discussed in Berlin, because I think in some of your board games you use estimation, which can be an intuition. I think about illusion, for example, which is we have to think about the percentage of color. It's very, very interesting. Or in your last board games,
wavelengths?
No, yeah, wavelengths is there is estimation, and the board game, you were in Berlin for the Kinderspiel. I can't remember the German board game.
Little Big Champs is it called in English, I think.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And estimation is also something that come in several of your board games, in fact.
Oh, again, this is nothing I realized before. This is not, now you tell me, now I realize it. Again, this is nothing that I'm aiming for, but I think this comes from the fact that I think most people are kind of equally good, have the same capability of estimate things. So I think there will not be a lot of people that will be better in the game because of having more experience, especially in my kids game, Little Big Champs. Even if my 5-6-year-old son has roughly the same feeling to estimate sizes, roughly the same capability than I'm having for it. Again, I'm not really sure where this is coming from, that I did it in Illusion and I did it in Little Big Champs, and I have it also in my other kids game that came out last year. That's Top the Cake, I think it's called in English. Maybe it's something that like subconsciously I like to use as a mechanic, because it's nothing where many people are better or worse than other ones, and we all are playing kind on the same level. And I think it's not used too often in board games.
No, not too often.
Where you
no.
have to. There are a few games out there, but it's nothing to say. Oh, it's a very common mechanic.
Was Illusion difficult to design? To find the cards, how you imagine the pictures on the card and everything?
Actually, it was done quite fast. I was just sitting there for 3 evenings and I was making them on PowerPoint. And the reason why the game looks like it looks is because it's one of the PowerPoint main figures that you can use.
Okay.
And that's the reason why you mainly have like circles and squares and something like that. In hindsight, I think this was a very good idea because the simple shapes makes it more easier to compare different sizes of shapes to each other compared to if I have used like complicated pictures or whatever. So I had it something like that in my head and I just worked on it like 3 days and then that it was. And then I think that at the end, the prototype pictures became the original pictures that have been published in the card game.
Now we are going to talk about also Fuji, which is a cooperative board game.
Yes.
Where you have lots of interaction with the neighbors we play. How you have the idea of Fuji? Because I think it's also a very original board game.
That's one of my favorites. I really like it a lot, and for me it's really hard to say before a game gets published which one will become successful.
Yes.
So if someone would have asked me, will Quacks be more successful or Fuji? I couldn't have said that. So I still like Fuji a lot. Although it's a kind of a game where, it's an experience that maybe not that many people are enjoying then compared to Quacks. I had the idea back when I was living in the UK. And I can remember my wife was away, so I was alone at home. And I was just playing around with dice on the table. I was sitting there, took a few dice, rolled them on the table, and tried to figure out a mechanic. And somehow, don't ask me how exactly it worked. This is now like 10 years ago. I got this idea of like for Fuji where you have to fulfill certain conditions, but you don't want to screw over your neighbor. And
we are talking about the Quacksalver of
Quedlinburg.
You won the Kennerspiel with this board game, and I guess it was a great moment for you. A great, it's because the Spiel. Kennerspiel or Spiel des Jahres are the most well-known awards in the world for board games.
Yes, absolutely. As you can imagine. I mean, winning the prize was amazing, but I have to say even more amazing was the moment when I heard about the nomination.
Yes.
Because, as I mentioned before, only 2 games have been published before, and then the Mind came out, and that's pretty clever, and Quacks of Quedlinburg. And all 3 games were nominated for Spiel des Jahres or Kennerspiel des Jahres, so 3 of my games. And this was like one of the most amazing moments that I ever experienced when you always dream about like one day maybe you can become like actually a board game designer and maybe even a professional designer. And you dream about maybe getting nominated one day for one of your games. And suddenly 3 of your games get nominated. I was like... It was crazy. It was just a crazy experience. And then winning it, also indeed one of the nominations, even won then, Quacks of Quedlinburg, Kennerspiel des Jahres, was and still one of my greatest experiences as a board game designer.
And now we're going to talk about future. What are your future projects or board games you're going to release soon, or projects, board games on which you work?
It's always hard to say how much I can say. So I normally don't work at a lot of board games. So I normally work like on 2 to 3 board games a year. I normally make 2 or 3 prototypes. That's normally the prototypes that you then see published. So what I can say is that, it's so hard. So I don't have a lot of big games coming out in the pipeline. What I can say is there's going to be another kids game of me coming out this year in Essen.
You told me that you like to design kids board games because you play lots of with your own children. Yes,
that's it. So my kids are now 6 and the other one 10 years old since last week, and they really enjoy playing games and then also try to enjoy playing my prototypes. But I normally only work on maybe one or 2 kids games a year. I just finished my 5th kids game right now as a prototype. let's see what's happening. It's right now at the company. The feedback is very good right now. But this will take another, I guess, a year at least until it come out. There's another board game at another company where I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, which will come out or should come out. Let's see, like in the middle of next year. I'm also quite proud. I've been working together with CMYK Games. This is one of the publishers, US publishers. I'm working very close together. There will be a game show coming out in autumn in the US that we three of us have developed at CBS. Game-wise, so right now I have quite some prototypes finished. That's normally not quite normal for me. Normally I have 1 or 2 prototypes finished that I'm waiting for. So let's say today I brought 3 prototypes to this testing round that are quite finished. One of them is already at the company. So there's not a lot of games in the pipeline right now, but it's normal for me that I only have like 1 or 2 games coming out in a year, or maybe 3 games. Yes.
We are going to talk about this prototypes meeting. You are curious about discovering the creation of other game designers, and are you curious to have their feedback on your own prototypes?
Yes, absolutely. I'm curious, and it's super important. I mean, it's great to get like feedback from your family and friends, but normally I never play with my friends because they're just not into board games that much and don't meet them on a regular basis. And when we don't play board games, and I normally play a prototype with my wife maybe 1 time, sometimes 2 times, and as long as she's not like super into the game and wants to play it over and over again. But this doesn't normally happen too often with my prototypes. She's like my hardest critic. So if she likes one of my games, I know, this is going to be a big success. So it's not happening too often. But meeting here with the other designers is one of the most important parts of the creation process. And the feedback that I'm getting is super important. And so you don't normally take like every feedback that you get and try to put it into your board game and change the board game on that. But you have to figure out on your own what is original feedback. And but I would say without this group here, it wouldn't be possible to make the games in this frequency and this quality that I try to do.
Do you like making co-creations, or you prefer to create your board games on your own?
It's not like I wouldn't like to make a co-creation, but it's somehow happened so far that I only created board games on my own. But this is mainly because I wouldn't even know how to start making a co-creation, because for me it works like if I'm taking one of my long walks that I normally do to develop board games and I have an idea for a mechanic, and most of the time my games are very simple. So once I have a mechanic that works, the game is like close to be finished. I have to like build around. So all the building around the mechanic, that's not too complicated.
Okay.
Finding a cool mechanic, that's the hard part. But finding a cool mechanic, I think I don't know how much another person can help me to find a new fun mechanic. You know what I mean?
Yes.
If I would be working on a bigger board game, I would say, I have some ideas that I don't really know how to proceed to have an idea for that. Can we work on this? I think this could work, but for the rather small and simple games that I make, I have the feeling once I have the idea, the game is like 90% done.
Yes.
The rest is like working, just to work on it. But that's the main thing that's there.
Thank you so much, Wolfgang, for your time. It was so a great pleasure for me to discuss with you.
You're welcome. I really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot too.
We will see in Essen, I hope.
Yes, absolutely. I will be there too again. Yes.
Okay.
You will be there too?
Yes.
So we see each other again.
Yes.
Okay. Great to hear.
Great. Thank
Absolutely.
You. Merci beaucoup. On remercie les auditrices et auditeurs qui écoutent le podcast. À bientôt. Au revoir.
Goodbye.
A huge thank you to Wolfgang, as well as to Alexander, Peter, Tino, and all the designers who invited me to their prototype nights.
This interview was recorded in Vienna on April 8, 2025, and this episode is produced by Polgara and Hammer. Our show is completely independent. Its contents are free, as in free speech, and we are not sponsored. Follow Polgara's account on Facebook, X, Blue Sky, and Instagram. Thank you for listening to Le Point de Polgara, and until next time, for a new episode.